Hey there, you're listening to the Start Something podcast, where we take you behind the scenes on the founder journey, breaking down what it takes and how it can change your life. I'm Shruti.
And I'm Bailey, and on this episode, we are going to be talking about how you can start your company in 24 hours or less.
Yes.
Let's get started.
It's a hard one, I think.
So 24 hours, that's not a very long timeline to start a company. And when we were chatting about this episode beforehand, I was saying like, oh, maybe we should give them a little bit more time, like 24 hours is pretty short, but I loved that you pushed me to see like, oh no, this is how you can do it very quickly, systematically, and in a way that is genuinely meaningful to you and helps you get immediate early wins and progress. And so let's step back a little bit and define our terms, talk about what a company actually is. This is super important, and what those first meaningful steps are that we can take to make progress. And then how we can learn from those steps so that instead of just moving forward with our first idea, we're able to respond to what the customer or the market is asking for. So with that being said, let's start off with terms. Talk to me about what a company is and what the objectives are.
Yeah, I think too often people get lost in the sauce of, oh my God, I'm a founder, I raised all this money, but I think they forget that in order to have a successful business, you need to get that product market fit. Founders have to remember that they're solving a problem for someone, and that's how you start to make revenue, right? That's how you start to drive impact. So the question is, how do I get my first dollar and how do I get started? First, start off with the Google Doc. So pick the problem that you're going to solve. It could be any problem, right? It might be a problem that you define in your own life. It might be a problem that you're experiencing in your day-to-day. It might be a problem that you've heard about from a girl sitting in the coffee shop next to you, right? So start with the problem and then define that audience. Describe who is in that audience. Just describe what they look like. Describe like the actions that they go through. Maybe they wake up at 6 a.m. in the morning. Maybe they spend most of their time online. And really defining who that person is will help you create that solution at the first solution that you're going to try. Guaranteed 99% you're going to fail the first time you think you go through that solution process, but let's get started with something, right? So now you've chosen your audience, you've really defined them, and now I want you to get started today. That's my goal. So what do you do, right? A few simple things that I got started with, and the whole reason this whole even started is because my mentor was like, Shruti, you're living in idea land. Like, I don't want you to be in idea land. I want to see something tangible. I want you to move the needle. I want you to make progress. So talk to me tomorrow in 24 hours and bring me something. And I was like, shoot, what am I gonna do by tomorrow, same time, right? So panicking, I had a few tools already kind of ready to go. One is the fact that I was familiar with GoDaddy. So GoDaddy is a domain platform, a domain purchasing platform. So you can literally buy a .com. You can buy, I don't know, startsomething.com for X amount of dollars, right? And so I quickly I found cheap domains for a couple cents. I'm trying to be hacky, I'm trying to be cheap. Purchased that domain and connected it to a Webflow website. And for those of you who don't know what Webflow is, it's a tool with a bunch of customizable pages. So I simply chose a landing page that all I had to do was change the text on. So all the design, everything was good to go, and all I had to do is fill in the text. Now think back to that Google Doc that we just talked about, right? That Google Doc has the problem statement written in depth. It has the audience who you're targeting. Now you just need to translate that onto this landing page, right? It's pretty simple, where you're like, hey, are you facing this problem? Do you look like this? Do you go through these experiences? Well, don't worry about it. We're here to solve your problems, right? Click here for 30-minute slot to sign up and chat with me. And it's really that simple. There's one last thing that I want to talk about, though, that's extremely key. It's the Google Analytics. So anyone can go and create this landing page now that I've made it really easy and tactical for you to go put out there. But how do you know how your audience is thinking? Or how do you know how they're feeling? How do you know how they're reacting to this landing page? And that's where Google Analytics, or any analytics tool, Stitchology, if I might add, might help you indicate and understand how that user is thinking or feeling, right? So let's say I put out a landing page and I see a bunch of users. They're scrolling up and down my page. Well, great. Now Google Analytics tells me how old these people are. They tell me where they're scrolling up and down. They're telling me if they're clicking on the sign up button or if they're dropping off, right? Or any analytics tool will do this, really. There's tools, Stitchology, the tool I created, literally will record your experience on the platform. So if you, Bailey, went onto this website and you signed up for a tool, it'll tell me exactly how long you took to get there and why you took that long. It's really cool to be able to see these insights behind that scene.
Yeah.
So I know I just gave information overload.
That's okay, let's break it down.
Okay.
So I'm going to repeat some of it back to you and tell me if I got it, and feel free to dive a little bit deeper in any of these steps. But
sure.
Step number 1 is to create a document, and you mentioned Google Docs, of course, but if you're listening to this and all you have is your phone and your notes app, or you just have a pen that you borrowed from somebody and a napkin at the coffee shop that you're sitting at, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
What you need to have in front of you is the problem that you want to solve, the person who has that problem, so like what that persona is. Maybe it's, moms younger than 25, that's the persona of people that I'm solving for. And then third, of course, is the solution that you're developing for them.
Yeah.
And so once you have those 3 pieces of information, you're ready to put that onto a website or onto a landing page. And it sounds like you're suggesting it can be really, really simple to start. So
really?
You describe the problem, you address or you make it clear that who's facing the problem, and then you say, no problem. Like we can solve, or this company was created to solve this problem for you. And so once you have that, that's step 1. Maybe step 1 is like getting the information down. Step 2 is putting it on a website. And then step 3 is the analytics. So I love that you're thinking about this in this 24-hour window, because as you were speaking, I remembered that when I was in college, I had a professor for one of my classes require that I build a personal website before the next class. And every student was assigned to build a personal website. That was really intimidating for me. And for years, I'd actually thought, I should really put a personal website up. And I never did it.
Yeah.
Until the professor said, you have 1 day. You need to have your personal website online and ready to be like cold called and presented in front of the class by our next class tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
And because I had that deadline, I was like, okay, I will get it done. Yeah. And I kind of got over needing to like make it perfect, because you simply don't have the time. And I think finding ways to create those time frames and those expectations makes it a lot easier to make progress instead of drowning in our own perfectionism.
I think a lot of people think they need a product in order to launch a startup, but you can actually trick your users into thinking that your product exists just with a simple landing page and saying sign up. And that's kind of the message I'm trying to send out right now.
Yeah, and it's so important in those early stages to figure out if you're creating something that actually resonates with your target audience. And so this is such a good way to start getting that data, because if you don't get feedback from your audience, you're not listening to your audience, and then you do all the things you mentioned, you go raise money, you get you hire an engineering team, and you build a product, and then you bring it to market and no one buys it, no one likes it. It's like, it doesn't resonate for anyone. It's like, oh my gosh, if only you'd gotten some data from potential customers early on.
Something that you could even think about is, okay, let's say you're getting overwhelmed. Maybe you want to create a website or a product for gloves. Maybe you want to create fuzzy socks. Maybe you want to create a heated blanket. This is why I'm suggesting buying multiple domains, because you can literally launch 3 different landing pages and say, want a heated blanket? Are you a college student? Are you cold? Well, don't you worry. Of course I'm getting one.
Okay, but before we get to multiple landing pages, which is a great idea, let's stick to 24 hours. Sure. And tell me, so I'm not an expert in Google Analytics. Let's say I've never even heard of it before. What can I do, assuming I've gotten a domain and set up a website, what can I do to start immediately leveraging a tool like Google Analytics? I think for someone, especially if someone doesn't have exposure to a tool like that, or they're not technical, it can feel really, really intimidating. I know it felt really intimidating for me, like when I was starting my company. And so how can you break it down and break it into like simple steps.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, and I hear that. And honestly, that really actually, it's not to be a plug here, but Stitchology was solving a lot of the hardships that even Google Analytics had with self-starting, enablement. For someone who doesn't have maybe any tech experience, how easy could it be? And with any of these analytics tools, the nice thing is that it's as simple as dropping a tracking code into your website.
Let's say you're not technical.
Sure, okay.
And you need to get this line of code into your website, but the websites that we're building are just kind of drag and drop, add text, etc. Yes. So how do I add a line of code to a website if I didn't code the website?
So A, Webflow is nice because you don't have to code the website. B, it tells you in Webflow where you can drop the tracking code.
Okay.
Which is perfect. Like simply, I wish maybe we could even link things into our podcast. I wonder if we can.
Brilliant.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea for us to make a guide. But really simple steps. And Webflow has a certain part of their website where you can simply paste it. It's as simple as drag and drop.
Yep.
And you can get started.
And Webflow is one example, but a lot of our audience has probably heard of Squarespace or maybe Wix. Like these are all website builders that don't require you to have any technical experience whatsoever. It's really easy to pick a good design or landing page and just go with it.
The other part of this is also, now you have this beautiful website, right? You have this landing page. You know exactly how to evaluate your audience when they reach the website. But the question that I get is, okay, Shruti, but how do I reach an audience?
Yeah.
The obvious thing, right? You have this beautiful landing page. Great. Now how do I get people to come on my website?
And that's also the question that every single company is asking, right? Like even if you have the best solution in the world to the problem that you're solving, if you can't figure out the channels to reach the people that you want to give your solution to or sell your solution to, your company is out of business.
Exactly.
Like it's absolutely critical to know the problem, the customer, like who you're solving it for, and then how to actually reach them. So tell me, how can I do this in 24 hours?
Yeah, 24 hours is the key, I think, because I can make like 10 more hours of content right now if we're talking about longer term like SEO strategies, if we're talking about partnerships, etc. I won't talk about that. Let's talk about what you can get out by tomorrow.
Okay.
Right? So let's take the audience of even college students, right? We're talking about, I love this heated blanket example. Let's stick with it. Literally
everyone can tell that I'm cold all the time.
Should we go turn on the heater?
Let's think of a hypothetical problem that college students might be facing. Please continue.
Totally. No. So it could be as simple as going up to a college campus and watching the kids who are walking by, right? And just like asking them to look at your landing page. Literally as simple as that. I know that's crazy and maybe a little sus and maybe you're too scared to go talk to college students. So what's the other thing? You can go online and just join a bunch of groups that are related to your target audience. So what I did specifically was go and find Facebook groups that were related to the persona that I was talking about. So if it's moms that love shopping at Trader Joe's, well, I'm actually part of that Facebook group, although I'm not a mom. But I know that I can target moms who love Trader Joe's very, very easily. I'm part of a bunch of random Facebook groups now, as you can see. Maybe a fun fact I shouldn't share with people.
As long as you don't share what the groups are, I'm sure it's fine.
Yeah.
Okay, so moms at Trader Joe's.
So that's one option. The other thing is really channeling my inner network. So my sister, for example, she's in college. Can I get her and her friends to look at my website? Can I ask them to send it to 5 more friends? So really getting hacky in that kind of simple way might be step 1. Step 2 is Facebook groups. Step 3 is even on Instagram. I would find people who are in my persona. So I'd literally search up college students, or you can go on TikTok and type in college students and they will post like reels or content around college students, and you can click that and literally DM them. Be warned, a lot of people will ignore you, but there will be people who face the problem, and those are your key personas that you want to stick with and you want to solve these problems for.
And I love that you mentioned your sister earlier and reaching out to her and asking her if she'd share it with a couple of her college friends, because going online and DMing strangers and asking them to look at your website is one, it can be very intimidating.
Yeah.
And two, it might not be the most productive thing that you can do in the first 24 hours.
Sure.
It's definitely a very productive thing to do and great for rejection therapy, like just in general, definitely a great thing to do. And if you're feeling nervous about like, oh, I don't want to DM strangers, no problem. Literally start with your friends and family.
Yes.
And it doesn't, like, your friends and family, they love you. They're going to be, most likely, they're going to be nice to you. They hopefully don't want to hurt your feelings. And so you're not going to get like perfect data from them because it's biased. However, it can be really helpful in the early days to just ask the people who are closest to you, hey, I'm trying to get feedback on this.
Yeah.
Would you be willing to look at it? And would you be willing to share it with someone who's, let's say, in your demographic? So ask your sister, hey, would you be willing to share this link with a couple of your friends and ask for their feedback? And then if you're using Google Analytics and someone goes to your website, like you mentioned, you can see how they're engaging, what they're interested in naturally. So
Exactly.
as long as you're not staring over their shoulder telling them what to do, they're naturally going to explore your landing page based on their own interest and curiosity. And so you can still learn from that information. And if someone goes to your website and immediately clicks away from it or closes the site, then you'll know, and maybe there's something I can say on my site that will draw them in more, etc. And so all of that data you can learn from.
Yeah.
But even if you don't have Google Analytics set up, and even if you don't have a website, like
Okay.
even if you haven't done this,
Yes.
there are still ways that you can start testing
Yes.
and getting feedback on the problem and your solution. Could you speak to that a little bit?
Yes. I think you make a great point. Like maybe you don't even have time to build a website by tomorrow, right? I still want you to get started literally today and be done by tomorrow. And the whole concept here is fail fast, right? It's not going to be perfect the first time around, but every time you put something out there, you're getting one step closer to actually finding the right solution, right? So with that in mind, let's say you don't have a website, it could be as simple as creating a form or a survey, right? And knowing who your audience is, asking the right questions, like, do you get cold? How often do you get cold? Would you allocate money towards something that's cold? I really think about the questions. I'm literally making it up on the fly here, but having those set of questions and then saying, would you buy a heated blanket for $10? Or even getting someone to pay, like sending an invoice immediately, for example. Being able to get that first dollar, that's proof that there's a problem and someone needs it and they're willing to pay. And that helps you, there's this term called willingness to pay. And I think it's really important when you're trying to find product market fit and seeing, being able to test that, that's a whole different topic. But just even getting that first dollar might be possible.
Yeah, and you might learn in the process that you're focused on college students, but their willingness to pay / ability to pay might be incredibly low. I know for me, when I was in college, dollars were there. I mean, I'm not rolling in it, to be clear, but dollars were really tight. I would watch my bank account get down to okay, I got $40 for food this week, really got to stretch this out. And so maybe college students actually aren't the right market for your heated blanket / heated socks. Let's say you came up with some electric freaking socks. I would buy those, first of all. But let's
they
say
exist, first of all.
They do?
I found your Christmas present.
Oh my gosh, yes. Okay, that is actually such good news. That's what the podcast is for. Yeah. So let's say you love the solution that you're developing, you're coming up with something that you think will have an impact, but the ability to pay just doesn't exist for college students. Okay, well, what demographic can you start reaching out to that might have the ability and willingness to pay that you're looking for?
Yeah, you need to define that audience, right? So even defining a college student's characteristics, to your point, maybe they have $40 in the bank account per week or per month, or that's it. Really getting granular in the defining your audience phase. Yeah. You might even realize in that moment, maybe I should not make a website landing page about heated blankets. Maybe I should focus on $3 pair of socks and just start there. Maybe it's changing the solution, maybe it's changing the audience. Like you touched on one aspect, I wanted to touch on the other as well. And just starting off with the doc, I think will give you that clarity. So even if you don't decide to build a website, even if you decide to build just a survey or a form, starting off with that doc, I think is the really important step there.
Absolutely. And there's something else that you said earlier that was super impactful, that is a mindset that if you adopt this, you will be able to solve any problem.
Yeah.
And I think this is a really good place to wrap up this conversation for now and let our audience go and start something. Like, okay, great, 24-hour clock starts, starts imminently. And the mindset that you brought up is that there is nothing that you can't find the answer to if you, for example, look online. And earlier you were saying, oh, it can be really intimidating because I don't know how to do X, or I don't know how to do Y, I don't know how to do Z, etc. If we say that to ourselves and we believe it, and thus we don't try to figure out the thing that we're not sure about, then we create like a routine in our minds that once we say, oh, I don't know how to do it, we quit.
Exactly.
And I think if we are able to develop this new routine, and maybe we've never done this before, but like if we can start to develop a routine where we say, oh, I don't know how to do Google Analytics, that sounds really intimidating. Okay, well, what if I typed into Google how to do Google Analytics, Google Analytics for Dummies, how to do Google Analytics in 3 steps. I promise that Google as a business has made it really clear and easy how to use Google Analytics if we're willing to ask that question.
But the key is to not stop figuring it out. The key is to go and make that Google search, take that extra step. The key is to go ask a friend, hey, have you done this before? Do you think you could help me out? So really persisting through that, that's a fundamental technique and skill that as a founder, unfortunately, you're going to have to experience every single day.
Over and over again. Because no one is ever qualified to start a company. Most likely, you've never sold the solution that you're selling. Maybe you haven't marketed a solution like that. You haven't built the product, etc. Those are all new. And the only way you're going to make it past the idea stage is if you're willing to ask questions and willing to believe that you can figure out the answers or the solutions. And so for this next 24 hours, the questions that you can literally put into Google are how to build a website without coding, or just how to build a website using Webflow. How to use, literally, how to use Google Analytics. How to use Google Analytics for someone with no programming experience. You could give more details, but literally, if you just Google how to build a website, how to buy a domain, and how to use Google Analytics, you will get those 3 to 5 steps
seriously
that these organizations have already broken down for people just like you who have never done this before. And even though we've been founders for a while now, when we were starting our companies, we had never been founders before. And so we had to learn everything from scratch, build everything ourselves. But if you ever hear yourself saying, oh, I don't know how to do that, I'm not even gonna do it, I'm just gonna quit. It's no. Just Google.
There's even ChatGPT. We're missing out on that, but
that's another episode. But just start Googling how to do this, or just start asking. Ask your friend who knows something about computers, or ask your friend who knows something about startups. Hey, do you have any tips for how I can do XYZ? Developing the willingness to ask and the willingness to even ask Google what to do will build that routine that
muscle.
We really, build the muscle that we need to keep going back and continue to ask the questions that we have and look for the answers that we need to start the thing that we want to start.
Exactly. I want people to turn this podcast off now and literally follow your steps.
Go start something.
Go start something.
That's great. We could have named the podcast that.
I wonder if we have time to change it.
Can we buy another domain name? How much did you say it costs?
Depends on what your budget is.
Okay. The 24-hour clock starts now. It starts now.
Now.
I want to go start something else. No, I'm just kidding. To my investors, if you're listening, I promise I'm focused. Okay, thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Start Something podcast. We will see you, or I guess you'll see us next week.
Exactly.
With another episode.
Exactly.
Coming in hot.
All right.
See what you accomplish in 24 hours.
Exactly.
That was us high-fiving, by the way, if you're just listening. if you're on Spotify, that's what that loud noise was. We apologize. Okay, bye.
Bye.